Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Kowloon Generic Romance Season 1, Episode 4. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So we have a flashback with Kudo and Kujirai, or Kujirai B rather, and she ended up kind of giving us some world building perspective on Kowloon. Apparently, what is now Kowloon is Kowloon Walled City number 2 because the original Kowloon was demolished in 94, but then it was illegally built back up. And then Kudo was like, well, why would people want that? Like, if you look at the way this place looks, it's super outdated. It got rebuilt to be outdated, but it's because people love how it feels and how it makes them feel. Once again, the whole nostalgia trip of it all, of like they didn't want it to change, and so they remade it exactly the way it was. So, but obviously Kudo is gonna like just let Kujirai go home because she wants to go to his spot. I don't know if it's the tea house place where Gwen works or not. She's like, oh, let's go somewhere, that place you like to visit often and get drinks. But it's like, no, let's not do that. And then like her bra slips underneath her shirt and he's just like, whoa, fix that. And she's like, oh, I'm sorry about that. But she talks about the fact is that you have a nice rapport with all the old people they play mahjong with. And then she kisses him. And I guess that's their first kiss. And it's just this very intimate moment. And then we cut to the Kujirai we've come to know waking up in Kudo's apartment because he had to bring her home. And so he's like, all right, that conversation we had last time, do you want to know about the Reiko Kujirai that I know? And she says no, because on some level, there's some instinct inside of her. Don't ask that. Don't ask those questions because you don't really want to know. And he's like, are you sure? And she's like, yes. And he's like, all right, okay. And she's looking for a key. He's like, I have this spare key for your apartment. Do you want to know why I have it? And she's like, no, I don't. He's like, well, here's a spare to mine. When you leave, lock the door, leave it in the mailbox, go home and rest, you know? So it's like, things are kind of, because neither one of them really knows how to act around each other, especially how like kind of, I don't know if nasty would be the right word, but how complicated and awkward. Because I think Kudo did not handle that situation at the end of last episode the best way. In fact, I think I even said it at the time, but he seems like an asshole for that. Like how he handled that. Once again, the other Gwen is kind of an asshole for like the way he approached Reiko. But it's also like he was tight with the original Reiko. So it's kind of like you're a pale imitation and it pisses me off. Because also like Kudo is a friend of his. So it's kind of... That's why they both kind of have this sourness in their mouth when it comes to the Reiko, because neither one of them fully knows what Reiko's situation is. And plus what we learned at the end of the episode, you can tell why, things kind of play out the way they are. But once again, every time you get some answers, it opens up a whole box of like 50 more. But really quickly, speaking of Gwen, we see him walking down the street with Hebinuma or Miyuki, which I thought was interesting that he's not wearing the mask anymore, but he's telling Hebinuma like, yo, you know what? You can't be walking down Kowloon by yourself. Miyuki's like, why? He's like, because we see with the other Reiko Kujirai, she looks, sounds, smells the same as the Reiko Kujirai I know, and she also has feelings for Kudo as well. So if you run into the other me, he's most likely going to try and approach you, which Miyuki's like, well, that might be kind of a good thing to kind of test out and see that if that is the case. And Gwen's like, oh, Miyuki, stop it. And so they go to the tea house, but then when they go to the tea house, they check out back, and Gwen, he never says his name, but since we're dealing with people who look exactly like them, I'm assuming they share the same name, especially because of the whole Mr. Chan of it all at the end of this episode. But I'm assuming this is Gwen as well. But he ends up saying like, yo, I built a little shelter for any cats to stay here anytime that it rains, but there's no traces that it ever existed, that I ever made it. Then he's like, something's always just felt off about Kowloon. So he goes into a store. The product they're currently selling is a product from Hebinuma Pharmaceuticals. It was the eye drops, but it's like, it was sold. It's a old product. This product is from 3 years ago, yet here in Kowloon, it's being sold like it's new. But Miyuki's like, yeah, but that happens sometimes on a regional basis that some stuff gets here later. So yeah, it's fine with like people selling old stuff as new. But it's still kind of like interesting that they are selling something from 3 years ago as if it's new, because like I said, it seems like they're stuck in this perpetual dream slash loop of this isn't what's really happening here in Kowloon. Like everyone's stuck in a potential haze or something, and seeing Kowloon as it was potentially 3 years, because once again we have no idea, because it's interesting because Kujirai is supposed to be 32. We have no idea how long Kudo and Kujirai were working together. Because like the thing they're celebrating at the beginning of this episode is his 2 months working at that real estate company. And once again, why is like Reiko being there? Why isn't the boss setting the thing? Not unless he showed up at not unless he showed up after like Reiko had already died and been replaced by this Reiko. We'll get into that. Oh yeah, because there was also the conversation about that Gwen was like, yeah, this fake Reiko. Hell, she even had the mole under his eyes. And then Hebinuma stops and he's like, mole? He's like, yeah, the one underneath her left eye. And Hebinuma's like, but that's the thing. Clones have not, clones, that's something they can't perfect. We haven't been able to perfect the detail like a mole. And I was like, interesting. And so it immediately answers a question I had last episode, because my thoughts were either we're going down the clone route, we're going down the android route. Especially later on, because Yao Mei points out that there was a comment she came across online that it was a conspiracy theory saying that the generic Terra had something, it was basically a research project for cloning. So, but they're kind of taking cloning off the books because Reiko having a mole, it's like, well, the clones wouldn't be able to replicate that. I guess the technology isn't good enough to be the technology is only good enough, like you'd be able to replicate the person, but something like a mole, which would be considered an imperfection, can't be made. So like to make a perfect clone, you'd have to make an imperfect clone, and you can't do that in a weird way. Like maybe that's like that might be the thinking behind it. But Miyuki's like, interesting. So someone who looks exactly the same, who could be a clone but definitely isn't a clone because that's not possible, and then also has no memories of the person they love. And Hibiki's like, I literally combined it. I was like, sorry, not Hibiki. Hebinuma, or Miyuki, I'm probably going to stick with Hebinuma, is fascinated by this whole situation. So you have, speaking of Yao Mei, her and Kujirai talk, and she tells her like, yo, like the original Reiko passed away, which she says Gwen told her that later in the episode, but I was like, did he ever tell her that? I think he expressly said like she was, I don't think he ever used the exact words passed away. Maybe I'm just not remembering, but like I don't remember him ever expressly saying what happened to her. Obviously they didn't tell you in details, but like even saying like she died, I don't even remember them saying that, but maybe they did and I'm just misremembering. Because that made me go like, wait, didn't she? Because she just kind of said like, oh, he passed away that Kujirai B passed away out of nowhere. And I was like, why is she saying that? Like, no one told her that, right? So that's why I was kind of confused by it. But then she says later on, Gwen told her. And I was like, did he? I don't remember him telling her that last episode, but either way, she points out like the whole like, yeah, I believe Kujirai B passed away because that's kind of what I know. And so it's the whole conversation again of, well, you are different people even if you look the same. And it's like, why don't you ask Mr. Kudo about it? But Kujirai's like, there's some part of me that's scared. It says like, if I ask him about it, it feels like this version of me, who I am, will disappear. On some level, and she's afraid of that because she says, like, basically going forward, I'm going to basically practice like absolute self in the regards of when I make a decision, if I feel it in my heart at the time, it is the right choice, even if I regret it later on and I have some regrets about it. At the very least, if I can follow my heart and believe in my heart, I believe this is the right decision at the time, then I will just try to find my way forward. I'll just live with like, man, I wish I'd done something different, but oh well, I made that choice. I believed in that choice. I wasn't trying to second guess myself at the time. Even if I second guess myself later, I'm just going to live my life by trying to find a way forward rather than kind of drowning on past mistakes, or, oh, did I make that decision because I'm making that decision and that's how I feel in my heart, or am I making that decision because that's what Reiko Kujirai B would make that decision, so. And obviously, Yao Mei's kind of got the interesting perspective about it because she also brought up about the whole clone thing that they didn't use the word clone. They use, was it zirconia? Zirconians as the word for clones. And zirconia is a synthetic mineral, and she has an earring made out of it. But then it kind of makes Reiko go like, oh, so it's kind of a thing of I am a fake, striving so hard to be real and never will be. But then Yao Mei says she likes these earrings because yes, it might be a synthetic diamond, but she says there's beauty in it, like it being like not real, but kind of basically being real. Like even in its fakeness, it's still real because it makes her feel better about her situation as someone who's like and I think that's why she gets along so well with Kujirai, because it's like I know what it's like to kind of not be you. Like from head to toe, she's had plastic surgery, so it's still like there's something real about her even with all of that, and that's why she likes the earring, and obviously that's why she likes Kujirai. Obviously it leads to like a definitely this whole situation has led to an awkwardness between Kudo and Yao Mei because this is the first time episode that they've ever interacted, and even then they have a very small interaction. To be fair, we got to skip over like this the house party essentially for Xiao Mei. But yeah, they have very little interaction because like Yao Mei does not like Kudo because he makes Reiko feel bad about being herself. And I'm sure for her, she's probably had people around her made her feel bad about being kind of basically a different person. Because she's all about leaving the past behind and she's fine with it. But like it's like she feel and it plays into a conversation later on when he went to go to get lunch and so did she, but he accidentally ran into Reiko and Yao Mei when they were coming back or whatever, and he was about to run into them. He's like, I just panicked and I hid instinctually, but he overhears their conversation because Yao Mei tells Reiko, like, why don't you just move out of Kujirai's apartment? Or you could get rid of everything in it and kind of start fresh. But Reiko doesn't want to because for her, it's like, if I get rid of everything, it feels like that apartment is all that exists of Reiko Kujirai B, and if I get rid of it, it's almost like she didn't exist, and it's kind of that sad and kind of being treated like you didn't exist. Like Reiko kind of gets that with her current circumstances being what they are, and it's like that would be too sad to just get rid of all there is. But for Yao Mei, it's like you're holding on to Kujirai B stuff because you're still trying to fit that mold, because she might not remember how she got there or where she came from, because it goes back to that conversation with Hebi Numa in episode 2 where he says like her wrinkles aren't natural, that it's just like your wrinkles were given to you versus like you got them through natural aging processes or whatever. And it's like she even says like, I don't remember when I got this apartment. I distinctly know where everything is though. So it is that thing of I am playing the role of Kujirai B. And she even says as much, like someone's kind of inserted me to play that role. And so for Yao Mei, she feels like not only Kudo puts that on her, but even Kujirai puts that on herself, trying so desperately to be the Kujirai Reiko that he loved, that it's like you're not being yourself. You're and once again, as someone who's abandoned the past and not letting that hold her down, that she's just being who she is now, she wants Reiko to have that freedom as well. And it's like, I want you to just be yourself and be able to reinvent yourself and just be the new you, be this you, but you're so hamstrung by the past if you stay there. And so we don't fully know how Kudo feels about it, because when the conversation comes up later, he's like, I don't care if Reiko feels uncomfortable and doesn't like it, then she could move out. But it's like, Reiko's like, no, I do like it there. But it's like, once again, how much of that is that Reiko just saying that just to say it because she doesn't want other people like Yao Mei to worry, even though Yao Mei is worrying, because she's like, I know you're only doing that because you're just trying to hold on to Kujirai B because you feel like that's the closest tie, because you and Kudo are in this awkward space and you're thinking by just being Kujirai B, like you can kind of, it's like, you want to be yourself, but like I said, you're being hamstrung to be Kujirai B. You're also putting yourself in a position to be hamstrung to be Kujirai B. So why not just start fresh and clean of everything? I even love that lunch and everything, because initially Kudo wasn't going to go, but he says like Xiaohei like forced his hand. I even love that it's like, oh, let's divide up the food, the lemon chicken, and Yao Mei gave him one piece of chicken and the rest of it was nothing but lemons. He was like, well, and she's like, what? is there something you want to say? He's like, nope, I'm going to keep my mouth shut. Once again, the animosity there. So I forgot how the conversation initially shifted when they went to go dispose of the trash. The conversation went back to the whole heavy Numa of it all. He had made, because I think they were looking at, like, across the street, there's a sign for heavy Numa Pharmaceuticals, and Reiko brought up, like, oh, he said he was going to build a clinic here in Kowloon. I wonder how did that go? And it's like, oh yeah, remember the day he came into our office, and Kudo was like, yeah, the day he kissed you. She's like, exactly. And then Kudo got close to her, like they were about to kiss, and then he blew smoke in her face, being like, you let your guard down. Because at first, I thought that was supposed to be his roundabout way of, like, giving her a cigarette, because he has his last cigarette, and he could have easily given it to her and we could share it, but it's like, the implications there are too much, so, like, why even cross that line and complicate things in that matter? But I thought him blowing the smoke in her face was supposed to be his way of being like, oh, like, this way we kind of shared the cigarette without sharing the cigarette. But also it was him messing with her a little bit. Later on, Kudo is playing Mahjong with the old guys, and it's like, oh, he's so lucky. If I remember correctly, like, Kujirai was, like, the lucky one. Funny enough, she would pop up behind him and stuff. But they're like, oh yeah, Mr. Chen, where is he? He's like, oh, he's kind of running late or whatever. And then we see that Gwen and Miyuki have him, and then they're calling in another Mr. Chen, who, the moment he crosses the boundaries into Kowloon, the Mr. Chen in front of them disappears, and you're like, wait, what the fuck? So I was like, so that's how that works, which Gwen's kind of happy about it, because he's like, oh, I don't have to worry about that means most likely the Gwen that was working at that tea house that we met in the show no longer exists. The moment this Gwen came to Kowloon, he immediately disappeared. Granted, we don't know the rules of this, not less that other Mr. Chen that disappeared, because who knows? Because it's interesting, because the Mr. Chan from outside that came in, he's almost like, oh man, Kowloon, I haven't been here in so long. And we never got to see from his perspective. All we saw, because we have no idea what he looks like. He could look older for all we know. Because, like I said, this could be a Kowloon that's like a dream. Like, it's a memory on repeat and play, and nothing, it looks exactly what it is. Like, who knows, like, how long Kowloon's been like this. So that's also probably why they never showed you Mr. Chen, because you probably would have seen that he was visibly older. Maybe. But also, we never saw things from his perspective, because when he's coming into Kowloon, what did it look like when he came into Kowloon? Like, how many people can see it for what it really is, or how many people, like, maybe even from the outside, it's almost like a genjutsu, where even from the outside, it still looks like the illusion of what people inside Kowloon are seeing. Maybe. So it begs the question, like, if this Reiko is here and the other Reiko is gone, maybe she ended up replacing her, or did this Reiko show up? Definitely showed up after the other Reiko died, but in this case, it's just kind of like a disappear thing. Because it's like, they don't recognize it. Like, Miyuki and Gwen don't look at it as like, oh, Mr. Chen died. It's not like they're remembering it. It's like, no, they recognize it as that guy was in front of us and disappeared. But it could be this thing of people who know this person intimately, they won't recognize that they've disappeared. They'll just be like, oh, that person died. I mean, what about that Mr. Chen that came into Kowloon? Is he going to stay here and replace that other Mr. Chen? Like, does his memories immediately, like, fold into filling in that void? So the Mr. Chen that was there, who was living life here, and where exactly his life left off when he disappeared, does that Mr. Chen that came in, the Mr. Chen B, I guess if you want to call him, does he immediately replace him, and it feels like, oh, I was always here and I don't even remember coming into Kowloon? Is that how that works? It's very confusing. I know I'm not phrasing it the best way, but that's my only explanation for how you get around that, unless the moment he entered Kowloon that happened and you immediately pulled him out to send him back to wherever he was. We'll have to wait to see whether or not we see Mr. Chen going forward, because Kujirai was like, oh, I'm wondering where he is. And then Kudo was like, oh, you never know, he could have died in his place or something. She's like, don't say that. He's like, yeah, like, that people kind of like die, like, I forgot the exact word. And Kudo was kind of almost like, people die all the time, and just at like, and it's almost like you never know, which is ironic because that conversation was happening at the time that the Mr. Chen they knew disappeared. So, and it was interesting that the person who broached that conversation both times ended up being Kujirai. It wasn't the others who broached that to her. She broached it to them both times. First, when it was Kudo and the old men playing Mahjong, but then she also brought up again at the end of the episode talking to Kudo. But then there's the whole conversation about how Reiko passed away, and Gwen kind of got very quiet about it because he's almost like, I promise not to talk about it. I think he made a promise to Gwen not to talk about. I mean, not Gwen, but to Kudo not to talk about it. But then the moment Kudo hears that it was Gwen that told Kujirai, he laughs maniacally, not maniacally, but just kind of has this like creepy laugh, and he turns to her and he's like, "I'm the one that killed her." Now, I don't think he means that literally. I think it could be, it could just straight up be figuratively he blames himself for, or something happened that he did. It could have been like a car accident and he's like, oh, because it was a car accident, I killed her. Or maybe he broke her heart and she died, and or he broke her heart and she might have killed herself, and then he still blames himself of, I killed her. So we'll have to wait to see, but I don't think it's straight up gonna be a thing of, oh, like I intentionally killed her. It was either accidental, like a car accident, or I broke your heart and you ended up taking your own life in the process. I mean, that also makes me think that scene, like when they were smoking and the whole party conversation came up and he was like, no, I'm not going to go. He specifically decided not to go because Yao Mei's name was name dropped, and he was also like, he had just overheard their conversation. He knows how Yao Mei feels about it all. So he's like, that's going to be awkward. But like I said, still got dragged to the party. But the moment Kujirai left, she turned towards the door and put her hand on the wall, on the doorway, and Kudo was about to do it on the other side, but he put his hand down, and just as he did, you see in the background Kujirai B's like shadow and figure like smoking, where it's just like every time you're trying to take that step forward, the past is dragging you back, both for Kujirai and Kudo. So just something to kind of think about in that moment at the end of the episode, kind of tying that in thematically, I guess, at least in my head. But some very, very interesting developments all across the board. It's going to be interesting to see where the next episode ends up taking us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.